I woke up with someone's arm across my waist and absolutely no memory of how it got there. The room smelled like expensive cologne and bad decisions. My head was pounding. My dress was on the floor. And there was a man next to me who definitely wasn't my boyfriend. Well, ex-boyfriend now. That's the whole reason I was in this mess. Let me back up. 24 hours earlier, I was Theresa Kingsley, marketing consultant, 3-year relationship, future all planned out. Then Marcus, my boyfriend, the man I thought I'd marry, sat me down in our favorite coffee shop and told me he'd been seeing someone else for 6 months. 6 months. While I was planning our future, he was building one with her. So I did what any rational person does after their world implodes. I went to the nearest bar in Gangnam and ordered everything that could make me forget my own name. That's where I met him. Tall. Sharp jawline. Eyes that looked like they'd seen too much but still had room for more. He sat down next to me without asking, ordered whiskey neat, and said nothing. Not the usual pickup lines. Not the fake sympathy. Just presence. And in that moment, that's exactly what I needed. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. When he asked if I wanted to leave, I said yes before my sober brain could interfere. What happened next is exactly what you think happened. Hotel room. Silk sheets. The kind of night that romance novels are written about, except this wasn't romance. This was two strangers using each other to forget whatever pain they were carrying. But here's where I made my biggest mistake. When I woke up that morning, before he could open his eyes and see me in the harsh light of day, before he could make this awkward or worse, treat me like I was just another conquest, I decided to flip the script entirely. I left money on the nightstand. 300,000 won. Like he was the one who needed paying. Then I leaned close to his sleeping face and whispered loud enough for him to hear, "Thanks for the mediocre sex. Maybe practice more before the next one." I saw his eyes flutter. He heard me. Good. Let him feel small. Let him feel used. At least I'd leave with my dignity, right? At least I controlled the narrative. I grabbed my heels and walked out of that hotel room like I owned the world, even though inside I felt like I was shattering into a million pieces all over again. The weekend passed in a blur of regret, shame, and trying to convince myself that what I did was empowering. It wasn't. It was cruel. But I pushed it down because Monday was coming and I had a new job to focus on. See, I'd been hired by ShineTech, literally the most prestigious company in Seoul. Landing this position was supposed to be my fresh start. New country, new job, new life. Everything was going to be different. Monday morning, I walked into that glass tower wearing my best suit and my most confident smile. The HR manager gave me the tour, introduced me to the team, and then said the words that made my blood run cold. "And now you'll meet your direct supervisor. He's brilliant, a bit intense, but you'll learn a lot from him." She opened the door to the corner office. And there he was. Same sharp jawline. Same eyes. Same man whose face I'd insulted 3 days ago after leaving money on his nightstand like he was a transaction. Executive Director Kong Min-jun. My new boss. Our eyes locked. I watched recognition flash across his face, followed by something I couldn't quite read. Anger? Amusement? Both? He stood up slowly, buttoned his suit jacket with deliberate precision, and extended his hand with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Kingsley. Welcome to ShineTech. I've heard excellent things about your work." His voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous. I look forward to a very memorable working relationship. My hand was shaking when I took his. His grip was firm. Professional. But his thumb brushed against my wrist just once, a reminder that he knew exactly what my skin felt like. The HR manager was oblivious, chattering about team synergy and quarterly goals. But Min-jun and I were having an entirely different conversation through eye contact alone. He knew. I knew he knew. And he was going to make me pay for that morning. As the HR manager left and closed the door behind her, Min-jun sat back down and gestured for me to take the seat across from him. "So, Miss Kingsley." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Let's discuss your first assignment. I believe in throwing people into the deep end. Sink or swim. You understand." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good. Because I expect excellence. Not mediocrity. He paused on that last word, his eyes glinting with something dark. I'm sure you understand the difference. There it was. The first shot fired. I lifted my chin, refusing to let him see me break. I always deliver excellence, Director Kong. You'll have no complaints about my performance. We'll see. He slid a folder across the desk. This is the Kim account. Our biggest client. They're threatening to walk because they feel undervalued. Your job is to make them feel seen, appreciated, and convince them that leaving would be their biggest mistake. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Consider it done, I said, grabbing the folder. One more thing. He stood up and walked around the desk until he was right next to my chair, looking down at me. In this office, we maintain absolute professionalism. What happens outside these walls stays outside. We're colleagues now. Nothing more. Can you handle that? I stood up too, refusing to let him tower over me. Professionalism is my specialty, Director Kong. Good. He stepped back. Because if I ever feel that your personal judgment is clouding your professional work, we'll have a very different conversation. Understood. Perfectly. I walked out of that office with my head high, but the moment I reached my desk, my hands started trembling. This wasn't just awkward. This was a disaster. How was I supposed to work for a man I'd insulted, paid, and then tried to forget? But here's what I didn't know yet. What neither of us knew. That night wasn't random. The bar wasn't random. And Min-jun sitting next to me? That definitely wasn't random. Someone wanted us to meet. Someone wanted us tangled up in each other's lives. And in 3 months, I'd find out exactly who and why. But that's a story for another time. Because right now, I had to survive working for the man I'd insulted, while pretending that the memory of his hands on my skin didn't make me lose focus every time he walked past my desk. They say never mix business with pleasure. Too bad I'd already mixed business with revenge, humiliation, and a one-night stand that was about to become the most complicated situation of my entire life. And the worst part? Some twisted part of me was excited to see what came next. If you want to know how this disaster unfolds, if you want to see whether Theresa survives working for Min-jun or if their past comes back to destroy everything she's built, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is just getting started. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. The first 2 weeks were psychological warfare disguised as corporate professionalism. Min-jun would schedule meetings at 7 in the morning, knowing I'd barely slept. He'd ask me to redo presentations 3, sometimes 4 times, finding microscopic flaws that didn't exist. He'd compliment my work in front of the team, then eviscerate it in private with that same cold smile he gave me on day 1. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life as a black woman in corporate spaces. You develop armor. Thick, impenetrable armor. And I wasn't about to let some bruised ego break me. So I played his game. And I played it better. When he asked for reports by end of day, I delivered them by noon. When he criticized my presentation style, I enrolled in a Korean business etiquette course and came back flawless. When he tried to rattle me with impossible deadlines, I met every single one and added extra analysis he didn't even ask for. The Kim account? I didn't just save it. I expanded it. 30% revenue increase in the first month. I watched his jaw tighten every time I exceeded his expectations. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. But then came the company dinner. In Korea, corporate dinners aren't optional. They're basically a second job where alcohol flows freely and hierarchies temporarily dissolve. I'd been dreading this one for days because I knew Min-jun would be there, and adding alcohol to our situation felt like pouring gasoline on an already burning bridge. The restaurant was traditional Korean, the kind with private rooms and low tables where you sit on the floor. Our entire team was there, about 15 people, and the soju started flowing before we even ordered food. I positioned myself as far from Min-jun as possible, sandwiched between Ji-woo from accounting and Sarah, another foreign hire. Safe territory. But around the 3rd round of drinks, the director of operations, an older man named Mr. Park who clearly had too much to drink, decided to target me for entertainment. Theresa, he called across the table, his voice too loud. I heard you had a boyfriend back in America. Why you come to Korea alone? He didn't want you. The table went quiet. It's the kind of inappropriate, drunk question that Korean corporate culture somehow tolerates from senior staff. I felt my face get hot, but I kept my smile steady. I came here for the career opportunity, Mr. Park. Personal life takes a backseat to professional growth. Ah, but a pretty girl like you alone in Seoul? He laughed, nudging the guy next to him. Be careful. Korean men will eat you up. That's when Minjun's voice cut through the room like ice. Mr. Park. His tone was so sharp that even the drunk director sobered up slightly. Miss Kingsley's personal life is not appropriate dinner conversation. Perhaps we should discuss your quarterly numbers instead, since they've been declining for 3 straight months. The table fell into shocked silence. You don't publicly embarrass senior staff in Korean corporate culture. Ever. Even if they deserve it. Mr. Park's face turned red, but he couldn't say anything because Minjun outranked him. He just nodded and went back to his drink, properly humiliated. I looked across the table at Minjun. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Something that looked almost like protection. Then he looked away and the moment was gone. The dinner ended around 11, with most people stumbling drunk into taxis. I'd paced myself, nursing the same glass of soju for the last hour, so I was relatively sober when I walked outside to wait for my ride. The Seoul night was cold, that sharp autumn kind of cold that cuts through your jacket. I was about to open my rideshare app when I heard his voice behind me. You didn't have to defend me in there. I turned around. Minjun was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his tie loosened. He looked tired. Human. Not like the corporate robot he'd been for 2 weeks. I wasn't defending you, he continued. I was defending the workplace standards. What Park said was inappropriate regardless of who he said it to. Sure. I crossed my arms. That's definitely why you looked like you wanted to throw him through a window. A small smile flickered across his face, so quick I almost missed it. Maybe I did. We stood there in silence, the city buzzing around us. Then he did something that surprised me. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I blinked. What? For the last 2 weeks. I've been. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Unprofessional. You didn't deserve that level of scrutiny. Your work is exceptional. I was letting personal feelings interfere with professional judgment. The very thing I accused you of being incapable of. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the man who'd been making my life difficult. This was the man from the bar. Vulnerable. Real. I'm sorry too, I heard myself say. What I did that morning. What I said. It was cruel. You didn't deserve that. He looked at me for a long moment. Why did you do it? Honestly. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Because I was terrified you'd do it to me first. I'd just been dumped, cheated on, made to feel worthless. I woke up next to you and thought, here's another man who's going to make me feel small. So I struck first. I wasn't going to make you feel small, Theresa. The way he said my name, soft and careful, made something in my chest tighten. I know that now, I whispered. A taxi pulled up, breaking whatever moment we were having. Minjun stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place. Get home safe, Miss Kingsley. I'll see you Monday. I got in the taxi and watched him walk back toward the restaurant through the rear window. And for the first time since that morning in the hotel, I let myself wonder what might have happened if I hadn't ruined everything before it even started. Monday came and something had shifted. Minjun was still professional, still demanding, but the cruelty was gone. He challenged me the way a mentor challenges a protege, not the way an enemy attacks a target. We fell into a rhythm. A good rhythm. Too good. Because here's the problem with spending 12 hours a day with someone you're trying not to think about. Eventually, the trying becomes the loudest thought in your head. I noticed things. The way he rolled his sleeves up when he was focused. How he took his coffee black with 1 sugar. The tiny scar on his left hand that he got from a kitchen accident when he was 12. He mentioned it once during a team lunch and I filed it away without meaning to. And I could tell he noticed things about me too. He started keeping the good pens at my desk because I mentioned once that I hated the cheap ones. When the office got cold, he'd adjust the temperature without saying anything. During late nights, he'd order food and always included the extra spicy tteokbokki that only I ate. Small things. Dangerous things. Then came the business trip. ShineTech was pitching to a massive client in Busan, and Min-jun chose me to accompany him for the presentation. Just the two of us. 2 days. 1 night. I told myself it would be fine. We were professionals now. Colleagues. Nothing more. I was lying to myself and I knew it. The presentation went perfectly. We were in sync, finishing each other's sentences, reading the room together like we'd been partners for years instead of weeks. The client loved us. Signed a contract worth millions. Afterwards, Min-jun suggested we celebrate with dinner before heading back to Seoul. We found a small restaurant near Haeundae Beach, the kind of place locals go where they don't speak English and the menu is handwritten. Min-jun ordered for both of us, and we ate and talked about everything except work. He told me about growing up in Daegu, about his younger sister who was studying medicine, about how he never planned to work in corporate but fell into it after his father died and left debts behind. I told him about growing up in Atlanta, about my mother who wanted me to be a lawyer and my father who just wanted me to be happy. About Marcus and how the breakup felt like losing my future, not just my boyfriend. Maybe you didn't lose your future, Min-jun said, pouring more soju into my glass. Maybe you just lost his version of it. Now you get to build your own. Is that what you did? Built your own? I'm still building, he admitted. Every day. We walked along the beach after dinner. The ocean was dark and endless, waves crashing against the shore. It was late enough that most tourists were gone, just a few couples scattered along the sand. Can I ask you something? I said, stopping to look at the water. Anything. That night. At the bar. Were you running from something too? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Seo-yeon. We were engaged. She died in a car accident 2 years ago. My heart dropped. Min-jun, I'm so sorry. The night I met you was the anniversary of her death. I went to that bar because I couldn't be alone with the memories anymore. And then you walked in, looking like you were carrying the weight of the world, and I thought. He paused. I thought maybe we could carry it together, just for 1 night. I turned to face him. Why didn't you tell me? That morning, or when we met again at the office? Because you made it very clear what you thought that night was. A transaction. Mediocre. He smiled, but it was sad. And maybe you were right. Maybe that's all it should have been. I was wrong, I said, stepping closer. About all of it. Theresa. My name was a warning. We can't. Why not? Because I'm your boss. Because it's complicated. Because I kissed him. Or maybe he kissed me. I honestly don't know who moved first. But suddenly his hands were in my hair and mine were gripping his jacket and we were kissing like we were trying to make up for all the words we hadn't said, all the touches we'd denied ourselves. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. This is a terrible idea, he whispered against my lips. The worst, I agreed. We should stop. Absolutely. Neither of us moved. 1 night, he said finally. Tomorrow we go back to Seoul and pretend this never happened. Can you do that? I should have said no. I should have walked away. I should have protected myself from the inevitable heartbreak that comes from falling for your boss who's still in love with a ghost. But I didn't. 1 night, I agreed. We went back to the hotel. And if the first night was about forgetting, this night was about remembering. Every touch deliberate. Every kiss meaningful. Like we were trying to memorize each other before the world forced us apart again. Afterwards, lying in his arms, I knew with absolute certainty that 1 night would never be enough. And that terrified me more than anything. Because in the morning, we'd have to go back. Back to boss and employee. Back to professional distance. Back to pretending that something hadn't fundamentally shifted between us. But as I drifted off to sleep, his heartbeat steady under my ear, I let myself have this. Just this. The morning would come soon enough. And with it, consequences I couldn't even begin to imagine. Morning came with regret dressed as reality. I woke up before Minjun, watching the Busan sunrise paint the hotel room in shades of orange and gold. He looked peaceful sleeping, his face relaxed in a way it never was at the office. I wanted to memorize this version of him because I knew the moment we stepped outside this room, he'd disappear behind that corporate mask again. I was right. By the time we were in the car heading back to Seoul, the walls were already up. He sat on his side, I sat on mine. Laptops open, both of us pretending to work while carefully avoiding eye contact. The 3-hour drive felt like 3 days. Theresa. He said it so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Don't. I cut him off. We agreed. One night. Let's just stick to that. He nodded, his jaw tight. Professional from here on. Professional, I echoed. That word became our shield and our prison for the next month. We were perfect colleagues. Polite. Efficient. Cold. We communicated through emails even when we were sitting 10 feet apart. During meetings, we never let our eyes linger. When our hands accidentally brushed reaching for the same document, we both pulled back like we'd been burned. The team noticed but didn't say anything. How could they? We were the picture of professionalism. Except late at night when I was alone in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about Busan. His laugh. His stories. The way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And I hated myself for wanting something I couldn't have. Then everything changed on a rainy Thursday in November. I was working late, alone in the office, when I heard shouting from Minjun's office. The walls were soundproof, but whoever was in there was loud enough that their voice carried. Then I heard the crash. I ran to his office without thinking and pushed open the door. A man I didn't recognize had Minjun pinned against the wall, his hand around Minjun's throat. Papers were scattered everywhere, a lamp was broken on the floor. Where is she? The man was screaming in Korean. Where the fuck is my sister? I didn't think. I grabbed the first thing I could reach, a heavy glass award from the shelf, and brought it down on the back of the man's head. Not hard enough to seriously hurt him, but hard enough to make him let go. He stumbled, releasing Minjun, who immediately pushed him away. The man turned to me, eyes wild with rage and grief. Who the hell are you? Security is on their way, I lied, holding up my phone. You need to leave. Now. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he backed toward the door, pointing at Minjun. This isn't over. You owe me answers. Then he was gone. Minjun collapsed into his chair, hand at his throat where red marks were already forming. I rushed to him. Are you okay? Should I call an ambulance? The police? No. His voice was hoarse. No police. Minjun, that man just attacked you. That was Seo Yun's brother. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. And he thinks I killed her. The room tilted. What? He stood up, started pacing, running his hands through his hair. The accident. The car crash that killed Seo Yun. I was driving. We were arguing about something stupid, I wasn't paying attention, and a truck ran a red light and, his voice broke. The investigation cleared me. Ruled it an accident. But her family never believed it. They think I'm responsible. I processed this slowly. Are they right? He looked at me like I'd slapped him. You think I'd? I'm asking what you think, Minjun. Not what the investigation said. Do you blame yourself? The silence stretched between us. Finally, he sank back into his chair. Every single day, he whispered. Every day I wake up and she's gone and I'm still here and I don't know how to make that make sense. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. It was an accident. You know that, right? A terrible, tragic accident, but not your fault. Her brother doesn't think so. Her parents don't think so. What do you think? He looked at our intertwined hands. I think I've been punishing myself for 2 years by not letting myself feel anything. By working myself into exhaustion so I don't have to think. By pushing away anyone who gets too close because I don't deserve. He stopped himself. Don't deserve what? You, he said quietly. Busan. That night. Any of it. I don't deserve to be happy when she's dead because of me. My heart broke for him. Min-jun, that's not how life works. You can't just stop living because someone you loved died. That's not honoring her memory, that's just. What would you know about it? His voice went sharp. You got dumped. I killed the woman I was supposed to marry. It's not the same. I stood up, stung. You're right. It's not the same. But grief isn't a competition, and neither is pain. What happened to Seo-yeon was terrible. But you're using it as an excuse to keep everyone at arm's length, including yourself. Get out. Min-jun. I said get out. He wouldn't look at me. This was a mistake. All of it. Go home, Miss Kingsley. Miss Kingsley. Back to that. I grabbed my bag and left, tears burning in my eyes. But I didn't go home. I went to the one person who might have answers. Finding Seo-yeon's brother wasn't hard. His name was Kong Jae-sung, and a quick social media search led me to a boxing gym in Itaewon where he worked as a trainer. I showed up the next morning before work. He recognized me immediately. You. The girl from last night. I need to talk to you about Min-jun. I have nothing to say about that murderer. He's not a murderer and you know it. I stepped closer. The police investigated. It was ruled an accident. Why can't you accept that? Jae-sung's face twisted with anger. Because my sister called me 30 minutes before she died. She was crying, saying Min-jun was acting strange, that something was wrong. She said she was scared. My blood went cold. Scared of what? I don't know. The call dropped. And 30 minutes later, she was dead. He turned away, his voice breaking. Min-jun was hiding something that night. I know he was. And I'm going to prove it. I left the gym with more questions than answers. What was Min-jun hiding? What had Seo-yeon been afraid of? And why did I feel like I'd stumbled into something much bigger and darker than a tragic accident? At work, Min-jun avoided me completely. He sent his assistant to deliver assignments. He took meetings in conference rooms instead of his office. It was like I'd become invisible. Fine. If he wanted space, I'd give him space. But I wasn't going to stop digging. I started going through old company records, looking for anything from 2 years ago. Client lists, project files, anything that might explain what Min-jun and Seo-yeon had been arguing about that night. And then I found it. Buried in archived emails, a correspondence between Seo-yeon, who'd worked in the legal department, and an external address. She was threatening to go to the authorities about financial irregularities she'd discovered. Embezzlement. Fraud. Millions of won being funneled through shell companies. The last email was dated the day she died. And it was addressed to someone at ShineTech. Someone high up. Someone who had everything to lose if Seo-yeon exposed them. My hands were shaking as I printed the emails and shoved them in my bag. I needed to show Min-jun. He needed to know that maybe, just maybe, what happened to Seo-yeon wasn't an accident after all. I was halfway to his office when someone grabbed my arm. It was Mr. Park. The drunk director from the company dinner. But he wasn't drunk now. He was cold sober and his grip was painful. Miss Kingsley. I think you and I need to have a conversation about what you've been looking into. Ice flooded my veins. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid. I've been monitoring your computer activity. Very interesting research you've been doing on our dear departed Ms. Seo-yeon. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Why don't we take a walk? Somewhere private. I tried to pull away but his grip tightened. Let go of me. I don't think so. You see, you've stumbled onto something you shouldn't have. And now we need to discuss how to handle that. quietly. That's when I realized the office was empty. It was past 8. Everyone had gone home. Even Minjun's light was off. I was alone with a man who might have killed Seo-yun. And no one knew I was here. Mr. Park started pulling me toward the emergency stairwell. I opened my mouth to scream, but he was faster, his hand clamping over my face. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Miss Kingsley. Accidents happen all the time in corporate buildings. Falls downstairs. So tragic. So avoidable. He pushed open the stairwell door and shoved me inside. I stumbled, catching myself on the railing. My mind raced. I had to get away. I had to step away from her. Now. Minjun. He stood in the stairwell doorway, and I'd never seen him look so dangerous. His eyes were ice. His whole body vibrated with barely contained rage. Mr. Park laughed. Ah, Director Kong. Come to save your little pet? Just like you couldn't save Seo-yun. I said step away from her. Or what? You'll call the police? Tell them what? That you found me having a conversation with an employee. Park's smile widened. Besides, we both know you won't involve the police. Not when they might start asking questions about that night again. About what you were really arguing with Seo-yun about. You son of a bitch. Minjun's voice was deadly quiet. It was you. You sabotaged the brakes. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply arranged for a mechanic friend to ensure certain safety features might fail under the right circumstances. The fact that Seo-yun got in a car with you that night was just unfortunate timing. My stomach turned. You killed her. I protected this company, Park snarled. She was going to destroy everything we built over some misplaced sense of morality. I did what was necessary. You're insane, I whispered. Park lunged for me, but Minjun was faster. He tackled Park to the ground, and they rolled toward the stairs. I scrambled back, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. Theresa, run. Minjun shouted. But I couldn't leave him. I dialed emergency services as the two men fought. Park was older but desperate, and desperation makes people strong. He got on top of Minjun, hands around his throat just like Jae-sung had done. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed the fire extinguisher off the wall and swung it at Park's head with everything I had. He went down. Minjun shoved him off, gasping for air. I dropped the extinguisher and ran to him, my whole body shaking. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? I'm fine. I'm fine. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. God, Theresa, when I saw him dragging you in here. How did you know? I never left. I've been watching the office camera feeds because I was worried about Jae-sung coming back. I saw Park grab you and I ran. He pulled back, cupping my face. I'm so sorry. For everything. For pushing you away, for not seeing what Park was doing, for. I kissed him. Right there in the stairwell, with an unconscious attempted murderer at our feet and sirens approaching in the distance. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. One night wasn't enough, he whispered. Not even close, I agreed. The police came. Park was arrested. The whole story came out. The embezzlement, the murder, everything. Minjun was finally, officially cleared. Seo-yun's family got the closure they'd been denied for 2 years. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 days after Park's arrest, I walked into work and found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a single piece of paper with 5 words that made my blood run cold. Theresa Kingsley is not who she claims to be. And underneath, a photo. Of me. With Marcus. Except we weren't in Atlanta. We were in Seoul. 2 years ago. The same week Seo-yun died. My hands started shaking because I'd never been to Seoul 2 years ago. Or had I? Let's hold it there so I can make sure you love and enjoy this story. If you need a part 2, like, subscribe, and comment part 2 so we can see what happened next. See you in the next part.